So over the past few weeks, we've been in a series called Lessons from the Life of. And little ringing. I guess I speak louder than JD does. The stories have been kind of sporadic, right? We all were given stories, or we all chose stories to try to bring out lessons and deliver messages to you. And so they haven't been in chronological order. So I'm going to connect a couple of them today before we get started. So 2 weeks ago, Ed actually preached lessons from the life of Jochebed. Did I say it right, Ed? Oh, let's go. And that is actually the mother of Moses. She went through a whole process of saving Moses' life. He ended up being raised in the household, in the palace of Pharaoh. So he is an Israelite child raised by the Israelites' captors, the Egyptians. Eventually, something happens. He is out in the wilderness of Midian, and this whole series was kicked off with JD preaching. I'm supposed to tell you where he is actually today. I'll tell you in a second. This whole series was kicked off with JD preaching the story of God meeting Moses in the wilderness and calling him to go back to Egypt to deliver his people. JD today is actually preaching for one of our other pastor friends at Renewal Church downtown. That pastor, Jared, he's on sabbatical right now, so he lined up a bunch of different pastors to fill in. And today is JD's day, which means that I get to fill in for JD. And thank you, Lakin, for filling in for me, leading today, right? So we all get to wear many hats. So, back to the story. JD told us how God met Moses at the burning bush, right? And many of us know this story. And how Moses was told to go back to Egypt to free the people, okay? And so, in between that story and the one we're going to talk about today, a few things happen. Number one, you may know already, but there are, Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, "Let my people go." Pharaoh says no. God says, "Okay, here's some difficulties," right? 10 plagues, right? And eventually, after the 10th plague, Pharaoh says, "Okay, you can go." The Israelites have fled out into the wilderness, and while they're out, there's roughly 1 million of them. This is not a small group of people. They come against the Red Sea, and they have nowhere to go because Pharaoh decides he wants them back. And he comes up, and they are pinned between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army. And one of the first real deliverance miracle that God performs for his people is the parting of the Red Sea. Maybe you know this story. And they get to the other side. Pharaoh's army is drowned in the middle. And then there are 3 other stories. Really 4. The 4th one is the one we're going to talk about today. All right? So they've left Egypt, crossed the Red Sea, and then they get on the other side, and all of a sudden they're thirsty because there's 1 million of them, and they're in the desert. And so God performs the first provision miracle, which is that they come upon this pool called Mara, which means bitter. The water is bitter, and it's unfit to drink. God miraculously makes it fit to drink. Then they get hungry, and God makes manna fall from heaven, bread and quail come from heaven to feed them. And then there's another water miracle where they get thirsty again, and God tells Moses to go to this rock and strike the rock with his staff, and water will come out, and that happens. In each of those 4 stories, Red Sea, water, manna, water, in those 4 stories, we see that every time the Israelites come against this hardship, they complain and they grumble, and they take it out on Moses, right? And they go to Moses, "Why have you brought us here? You brought us here to die. It would have been better for us to die in Egypt," right? Different things like that. But in each of those situations, in each one, we see the Israelites fixate on their situation rather than on God's sovereignty. They fixate on their situation rather than God's sovereignty. And in that last story where he strikes the rock with water, or strikes the rock with his staff and water comes out, in that story, they actually go to Moses, and it says they're quarreling with Moses, right? They're quarreling, they're arguing. "Why have you done this?" And Moses says something to the effect of, I'm paraphrasing, but he says something to the effect of, "Why are you coming to me?" Right? Go to the Lord. Go to God. He's the one providing. I'm here with you, right? Moses is thirsty too. Moses is hungry too. He's in it with them. But the tendency of the people is to focus and fixate on their situation rather than on God's sovereignty. So then we come to the next story, and that's where we're going to be today, which is Exodus 17, verses 8 through 16. If you're using one of the paper Bibles, that's page 55. Exodus 17, verses 8 through 16. It'll also be on the screens if you want to follow along there. So they've just received water from the rock. Then Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, "Choose for us men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." So Joshua did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. And whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands grew weary, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it, while Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side and the other on the other side. So his hands were steady until the going down of the sun, and Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his people with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this as a memorial in a book, and recite it in the ears of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven." And Moses built an altar and called the name of it, "The Lord is my banner," saying, "A hand upon the throne of the Lord. The Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation." So a couple of things are happening in this story. Number one, the people of Israel are escaping, right? And they are coming out of 400 years of slavery, right? This is not an organized group of people. This is actually 12 individual tribes of people, most of whom don't actually even get along very well, right? They aren't a nation yet, really, because they don't have a king. They aren't a country yet because they don't have a land, right? But they are 12 tribes out in the middle of the desert. Again, about 1 million people. And this is their first battle. They don't have an army, right? They don't have a whole lot of training. Slavery for 400 years, right? Probably they didn't even have actual weapons, right? They may have had some different ways that could have happened, but they are most likely not as well prepared as the armies of Amalek. What they do have is the staff of God, right? And so Moses goes to Joshua and he says, "Hey, look, our people are being attacked over here, somewhere in this group of 1 million people. They're being attacked, and I need you to get some men together and go take care of that." This is not, again, it's not super organized. They're just going to fight. And so Moses says he's going to go up on the hill, raise the staff, which has been used in all of these miracles, by the way. It is the representation of God to the Israelite people. And then we see, again, that Moses' arms fall, and Aaron and Hur help hold him up. And Israel wins their first battle, not because they're awesome soldiers, not because they're well-trained, but because the Lord delivers. And so the first real thing I want to talk about is the Lord is my banner. The Lord is our banner. And they get to the end of this story, and Moses says, where to go? Verse 14, Verse 15, and Moses built an altar and called the name of it, "The Lord is my banner." This idea, in Hebrew, it is Yahweh Nisi, the Lord is my banner. And in warfare, a banner goes at the head, right? We still kind of do this today, right? You can think of like the Revolutionary War, where you see in movies the guy with the flag that you're like, why is that guy running first, right? But we carry our banners into battle. Even the military today, our flag is on their shoulders so that no matter where they go, the banner goes first. Everybody knows who they represent. In fact, we all carry all sorts of banners. Sports teams, right? Even when we move, who here is like a diehard fan of any sport? Who's like, I'm never leaving this team no matter where I move, all right? Who is it, Maddie? Who's yours? Bruins, all right. So if you move to Georgia, you don't have to, but if you move to Georgia, you're still a Bruins fan, right? He's going over to a friend's house. He's wearing his Bruins jersey. That is his banner. It goes before him. Before he knocks on the door, if somebody sees him walking up, they know who he represents, right? my brother-in-law came to visit last year sometime, and we went to a Red Sox game, and he wore an Atlanta Braves hat. And the Braves were not playing, right? It was not the Sox versus the Braves. It was just two other teams. But he is a Braves fan. And it wasn't heated or anything, but, there were some comments, there were some conversations. But he went into that stadium knowing, right, that was the banner he was putting forward. Many of us wear Charlestown flag hats and 02129 shirts. These are banners people recognize. Bumper stickers and vanity license plates. Profile pictures and bios. Right? The first thing that people see or know about you, these are all banners that we carry and put forward. Now, I'm not saying that we should all go home today and change our profile pictures to crosses, right? You don't have to do that. But what I am saying is that wherever we go as Christians, the Lord goes before us. This should be our mindset. Wherever we go as Christians, the Lord goes before us. And so the point would be, if you're meeting someone new, they don't know you, maybe they don't know right off the bat that you love Jesus, maybe they don't, right? But pretty soon, they should kind of recognize something's a little different about this person, right? They may not know what it is right off the bat, but the Lord is going before you. Your coworker is angry at you, you could easily respond in anger, but if the Lord goes before you, you respond in love. You're invited to a party where some things are going on that are not good for your sanctification, right? Not going because the Lord goes before you. You have a financial opportunity that requires you to set aside your moral integrity. It's not a decision. The Lord goes before you. It's already there. You're representing him. Last one, you have the chance to cheat on your spouse. The Lord goes before you. In these moments, the Lord is your banner. Now, worldly banners, I named a bunch of the banners that we carry, right? They're not necessarily bad, but they are fleeting, right? You'll change your profile picture, right? It's not going to be the same for forever, right? Baseball is the great American pastime, but it may not last forever, right? We may not always wear baseball caps that represent teams. It's kind of weird to think about that, but it might happen. Christians have been carrying the banner of the cross of Christ for over 2,000 years, and it's not going away. So even though some banners come and go, the one that we carry as Christians, never going away till the end. The banner of the cross has been passed down from previous generations, and it's our duty to help raise up the next generation while also calling this generation to join us. That was a lot of generations. Do I need to say that again? I'm going to say it one more time. The banner of the cross has been passed down from previous generations, and it's our duty to help raise up the next generation while also calling to this generation to come and join us. This is the banner mindset, that we are carrying this thing, right? Not that it depends on us, right? Not that if we let it down that somehow the church is going to crumble. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is the banner mindset is for us as believers, as we approach anything in life, the Lord is already there. The Lord goes before us. He's what we lead with. So that coworker who's angry at you needs Jesus, and you're the one carrying his banner. That financial opportunity that will require you to wade into murky moral waters, people need to see us walk away from situations like that because you refuse to damage the banner of the Lord that you carry. The Apostle Paul understood this idea when he simply stated, to live is Christ and to die is gain. To live is Christ, to put his banner forward and first. The purpose, we talked about the mindset of the Christian life, the purpose of the Christian life is to carry the banner of Jesus Christ into every single situation I enter. That's our purpose. It's part of it, right? When we carry the banner first, then obedience is what is on our mind, right? Obeying each move that the Lord directs. This is a life of sacrifice, which is worship. Carrying the banner of the Lord leads us into a life of worship. When we go into a situation, we don't wait and I'll wait and see what happens, and then I'll decide if I'm going to obey or not. No. The banner is already there. The Lord goes before us. I already know what's going to happen. I already know the decisions I'm going to make. It doesn't make it easy, right? Certainly does not make it easy. But like JD says many times, living our life with our yes on the table, right? If God calls us to go somewhere or to do something, yes is already there, right? Similarly, when we get in these situations in life, the banner of the Lord is already there. It's at the front of the army. Keeping the mindset that the Lord goes before us and embracing our purpose to carry his banner into every situation will give us a worshipful life that is focused on obeying God and carrying his truth to the world around us. All right, so let's get back to the story. All right, that is the Lord is my banner. How can we see these principles that I just talked about play out in the story? It kind of depends on the perspective that we take. So I want to talk about perspective for a second. You can throw that first picture up there. Perspective has to do with how we see something, right? Is he up there? Arnold? Yeah, there we go. All right. Perspective has to do with how we view something, right? From where we see something. Okay? So think of, this is just an example, but think of really any movie line that's like super quotable. It's just classic movie line, right? The perspective here is that it zooms in on him, right? And then, I'll be back, right? That was a terrible impression. It's fine. But what if everything was the same? What if the acting was the same, the story was the same, everything was the exact same, except in this moment where he says the line, the camera was like over here looking at the left, like on his ear, right? And he was like, I'll be back over there. It would be terrible, right? It wouldn't have the same effect, right? It wouldn't have the same meaning and it probably wouldn't be as meaningful of a line as it is today or have lasted as long. Let's give another one. How many of you have seen Jaws? Anybody seen Jaws? Okay. Everybody knows the shark is fake, right? Let's go to the next one. So what if we actually saw how it actually worked, though, right? We never saw this part in the movie, right? But this is the shark from Jaws. This is what it looked like the whole time. What if the camera had caught this in the middle of the movie, like at the point where you're the most scared, right? And then all of a sudden it's that, right? It wouldn't have been quite the same, right? Perspective matters. And then CGI comes into the world and is a whole new idea, right? So go to this next one. Maybe you recognize this one from the movie Twilight. This is my favorite. This is so funny. So she's petting the wolf. That's cool. Somebody's going to get mad at me for calling it a wolf probably. But what's actually happening in real life is this. Yeah. Go back one time. And go forward again. Yeah, it's ridiculous. All right. So I could do this all day. But these ideas, like perspective matters, right? If we saw that in the movie, all of a sudden the whole perspective of the movie is broken, right? Everything about the movie is broken. Well, let's go ahead and go to the next Moses one. Yeah, perfect. So I don't know if you can actually see this, but down in the bottom right corner is like a bunch of little just dots, specks that are supposed to be the Israelites fighting the Amalekites down here. And we can totally look at this story from this perspective, right? I'm not saying this painting is bad or anything like that. I could look at this and read this story and think, okay, I'm up there on the hill with Moses and Aaron and Hur, right? And the lesson that we would get from this, or a lesson that we could possibly get from this, is that, okay, well, I'm a Christian and I'm a leader and I need help sometimes to obey God and to do what is necessary. I need help. I need brothers and sisters to come alongside me and help hold my arms up. We could do that. It's not great, right? I'll tell you the problem with it in a second. We could also look at this. It'd be very easy, very, very easy for me to look at this as a leader in the church and say, well, Moses is obviously JD in this story, right? And he's leading you guys. You guys are the army, right? And me and Kayla and Stephen have to come alongside him and hold his arms up when he's tired, right? And we could make this story about JD. The problem with both of those perspectives, and it's true, JD gets tired and we do have to help him, right? We all get tired, right? But the problem with these two perspectives is Jesus isn't anywhere in them. We haven't established the cross anywhere in this story. So while we could get maybe some lessons out of that, what we need to know is that the strongest perspective in reading any Bible story will make Jesus the hero and it will leave us with an undeniable victory. The strongest perspective will make Jesus the hero and leave us with an undeniable victory. So it turns out it's really hard to find a picture of this story, painting or anything from the opposite perspective. So I have this really terrible one where everybody has like really nice armor and it's not real at all. But if you look up in the top right corner, Moses and Aaron and Hur are up there, right? And so if we place ourselves down in the battle, right, We change our perspective. We're not up on the mountain. We're down in the battle. If we place ourselves down in the battle, then from this perspective, we can look up and see 3 men on a hill. And as long as the man in the middle has his arms outstretched, then the battle is won. From this perspective, we are reminded how centuries later, Jesus would carry a cross up a hill, be raised up with his arms outstretched, and there he would claim the final victory over sin and death. Though Moses needed help keeping his arms up, no one but Jesus could bear the burden of the sin of the world, and his arms never wavered. Like JD said last week, Jesus has already won the war over sin. And because of Jesus, we fight from victory rather than for victory. Now, if you go back to that other slide real quick, the previous picture, we could get in here, right, and talk about, like, this analogy could go on for forever, right? Oh, well, some of us are really strong soldiers who fight the toughest battles, right? Some of us are that guy down on bottom who's just trying to stand up, right? And he's got his sword up and he's just trying to get back up. Sometimes that's all of us, right? In our faith, in our sanctification life, right? Sometimes we are the one on the ground rolling around just trying to get out, right? Sometimes we are feeling strong, right? And we are winning the battle that's in front of us, right? The individual fight. And we need that, right? Many of us, when we lead you guys and you become leaders and we call you out to go to another ministry area or whatever, we are taking you and organizing this battle. But that doesn't change the fact that we're all in the battle together. Me, you, JD, Stephen, Kayla, all of us. No matter what our job is in the church, no matter what our role is, we are all down in the battle. Jesus is the one on the hill who's already won. And we fight from victory, not for victory. So maybe this morning you find yourself spiritually weak or tired. You're the guy on the ground trying to get up. And you can't see the victory anymore because you're looking at the enemy in front of you. Or maybe you're spiritually strong right now and you've taken your eyes off of the victory God has given you because you're too busy trying to win it yourself. So either you can't see the cross because you're so worried about what's right in front of you, you can't see that Jesus has already won, or you're so busy fighting it yourself, trying to earn it yourself, that you're not even paying attention. Many of us, like the Israelites, have the tendency to fixate on our situation rather than on God's sovereignty. Some of us don't intuitively trust in God. Remember, if we go back, I referenced it earlier, but if we go back to verses 1 through 7 of chapter 17, the story of the Moses hitting the rock with the staff, it says that the people thirsted for water, and the people grumbled and quarreled against Moses and said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" A lot of the time, when we come up against hardships and come up against difficulties in our faith or in our life in general, our tendency is to look at someone beside us, right? Or look to the human oops, sorry. I'm not used to wearing this thing. Look at the human leaders beside us and blame them and say, "Why have you done this thing? Why have you done this?" It's our tendency to fixate on the situation and look for a human situation first, look for someone to blame beside ourselves, instead of relying on God's sovereignty and immediately taking it to Him. We often treat prayer, me included, we often treat prayer as if it's the last resort, right? As if going to God is, well, I've tried everything else, right? It doesn't mean we shouldn't try other things, right? We're sick, we need medicine, yes we do. We also need God, right? We need God first. So it's not wrong to go to the doctor and pray, right? It's not wrong to there's a whole movement about this. I'm not trying to get into that. But Jesus and therapy, it's okay, right? Like, we need these things. Jesus and counseling, right? We need these things. But we can't treat God like He is the last resort. He is the first and only resort, because everything that we can have as options, medicine, counseling, wisdom from other people, all those things are there because of God's sovereignty to begin with. We have to train ourselves to look up and trust in the work that Jesus has done. We have to train ourselves to look up to the cross and trust in the work that Jesus has done. So let us all be quick to run to the Lord, for he is the only one who is sovereign over every situation. So as I'm trying to, my natural kind of state, or my natural tendency is to teach. Like, I want to teach you so much that's in here, right? But as I'm learning to preach, and JD and Steven are helping me learn to preach, I'm pretty terrible at assessing how long this goes. So this is going to be a short, I'm not completely done, but this is going to be pretty short today. And but I hope that it has resonated with you, because here's the application. And I actually want to take a little time on this application, okay? In what areas, it was up a second ago, in what areas of my life am I most likely to fixate on my situation rather than on God's sovereignty? What is it in your life? What area is it in your life where we enter into this thing and say, okay, God, I got this one. I need your help in these 3 areas, but I got this one. That's fine, right? Or we come over here and we do that, we live that way, right? I got this one, and then it falls apart, and we come over here and go, God, where are you? Well, I didn't put him first. He was not my banner in that area of my life. What areas are we not carrying God's banner in first? If we're honest with ourselves, it's probably really easy to name these places in our lives. It's probably pretty easy. We don't have to think very hard. We have to start seeing these areas of our lives as battlefields, right? These little areas where we don't surrender, where we don't look up, we have to start seeing them as battlefields. Not just, oh, there's grace for that. There is, but we've got to see it as a battlefield. The enemy wants that part of your life distracted and away from Jesus. Jesus has already won the war, but we're still fighting little battles. If we start taking these battles seriously and we start carrying the banner of the Lord into every single area of our lives, we will see real change happen in us. That change will draw more and more people to Jesus, and we will be known in our neighborhood, in our city, our country, and our world as the people whose banner is the Lord. Like, how awesome, how beautiful would that be? That we're all walking around with different banners, right? Different worldly banners. We've got our Bruins shirt on, right? We've got our Braves hats on. We've got whatever, right? But when we're all together and people recognize us, they say, that is the people whose banner is the Lord. It's beautiful. There's a C.S. Lewis quote. It's probably my favorite quote. He said, "My prayer is that when I die, all hell will rejoice that I have been pulled from the fight." My prayer is that when I die, all of hell will rejoice that I have been pulled from the fight. The enemy does not want us to carry the Lord's banner in our lives. He doesn't want it. He knows he's lost, right? He knows he's lost the war, but he wants to win these battles. And when we don't carry the banner of the Lord into them, we've lost. So as we move, this is going to be a kind of extended time of response and invitation. We're going to do 2 things today. This is why it's a little longer. Number 1, I would like us to actually I'd like to invite you to take up the banner of the Lord right now. Those areas of your life that you thought of a second ago, take the time right now to commit them to the Lord. Doesn't make it easy. Certainly does not make it easy, right? Maybe we need help. Maybe we do need someone to come beside us and hold up our arms. Maybe we do need that. Know that Jesus has won the war, but these battles require us to carry the banner well. And so as you're as you're working through that and as you're praying through this, I'm going to play a little bit, and I want to give us time to really consider this and dive deep, right? Not just hear this lesson and go home, right? Really dive deep into this. Where am I not carrying the banner of the Lord in my life? If there's someone around you that you feel comfortable with asking them to pray with you, that's awesome. Let's start that now and continue praying after, right? Continue inviting people along to help you, right? The altar's open. I know some of you don't come from a tradition where that's a thing, and that's fine, all right? But I want us to take a good extended period of prayer here. to not just flippantly say, okay, well, I'm going to go into this week and carry the banner. No, let's take time to pray, ask for God's strength, pray with each other, move around the room. And then for the second part, I'm actually going to sing a song that applies to this really well. And I'll invite you to listen and sing along at some point. But let's do that. Let's enter into a time of prayer.